Hello, this is David Bryant, and welcome to this episode taken from Chapter 2 of The Hour Has Come, How a Christ Awakening Wins the Battle for the Soul of America. We're now ready for our third diagnostic that looks at America's soul, and it involves the decline of interest in and involvement in religion. Religion is generally defined as a system of beliefs and practices and ethics, and of course worldviews connecting humanity to that which is supernatural and divine and transcendent to some level of spiritual realm. Let's take one more example of how this area is shaking the foundations of America's soul. It's the warning that Christian Smith refers to in his recent book, Why Religion Went Obsolete. The word obsolete says it all. James Davison Hunter, a respected scholar in the field of sociology of religion, says Smith's findings make it an era-defining book. Reviewing it, evangelical philosopher Michael Horton writes, "It is widely recognized that traditional religion in America is in a spiral of decline, and the larger cultural environment made traditional religion, especially Christianity, feel irrelevant to younger generations of Americans." So clearly, Americans are rapidly moving away from a formal recognition of the Judeo-Christian worldview that gave birth to many of the timeless principles ratified by the Constitution, which itself represents the soul of our founding fathers and mothers. Now, I realize that recently there seems to be a shift among Gen Z men, some of whom are returning to Sunday worship, particularly in more liturgical traditions, and that is something to cheer. But will it last? On the other hand, the same studies show that women of all ages are becoming less involved in religious activities. But the overall trend of fading religious fervor helps explain in part why students of the larger cultural environment agree that a disturbing spiritual void has begun to impact our national life. Many Americans no longer hold any strong sense that there's a permanent moral order to the universe. In turn, then, this leaves individual Americans with fewer constraints when developing their own moral standards by which they live, whether privately or in public. Tragically, research and polling reveal that a host of us lack a confident understanding of what makes something fundamentally right or wrong. Many rely instead on a set of individual preferences rather than previously honored general biblical standards to provide them with their moral compass. And finally, the number of Americans who identify as Christian has decreased from 78% to 63%. For every person who joins the Christian faith in the last few years, 6 people have left. And even those attending churches show up, on average, at only 1 of every 4 Sunday services. Furthermore, each year, thousands of churches shutter their doors due to depleted membership. You can't get away from these trend lines. That's what one social scientist of religion put it. In general, religious fervor in the United States is moving in the wrong direction. So we can totally forget about there being an evidence of any increase of zeal specifically focused on Christ and his kingdom. No, the growing shortage of a religious-based moral and spiritual compass is gradually weakening and confusing our American soul. If we truly are one nation under God, then those 4 words need to become reality for a vast majority of Americans. A nation that sees itself truly under God, that is, that's living in his presence and feel themselves accountable to him, well, the impact of that realization will necessarily create a moral core in the face of the destructive forces of things like pornography. It will necessarily reignite spiritual hunger that can lead to a more sacred core in our nation, if not initially, at least into some kind of religious involvement. And that's the gift of an American Christ awakening. First, God's people are more deeply engaged in God's Spirit with God's Son so that we become wholly alive to Jesus as the one in whom we live and move and have our being every moment of every day. And then second, in turn, then these spiritual dynamics release into the soul of a society a stream of holiness and wholeness that finds its focus much more on what it really means to be one nation under God. It's like Isaiah predicted. So in principle, this is the promise of the impact of the gospel of the living, life-giving Messiah for any generation. He says, "Get out of bed, Jerusalem. Wake up. Put your face in the sunlight. God's bright glory has risen for you. The whole earth is wrapped in darkness, and all people are sunk in deep darkness, but God rises on you. His sunrise glory breaks over you, and nations will come to your light, and kings to your sunburst brightness." Surely, the hour for this kind of healing for our national soul, surely the hour for this has